Unsettling as it may be, every 2.1 seconds, an act of racial discrimination occurs in the United States. Yes, you heard that right, folks. A blink of an eye, a heartbeat, and in that fleeting moment, another instance of prejudice, another life impacted by the color of their skin. Let's take a step back in time. Racism. It's a term that has been intertwined with the history of America from its inception. From the painful era of slavery to the civil rights movement in the 60s, the battle for racial equality has been long and arduous. Yet, despite the strides made, the ghost of racism still haunts the American landscape. Today, racism has evolved. It's no longer just about racially charged slurs or overt acts of discrimination. It's about systemic racism, the kind that's woven into the very fabric of our institutions. It's about microaggressions, subtle, often unintentional acts that marginalize people of color. It's about racial profiling, the unfair targeting of individuals based on their race or ethnicity. Yet it's not all doom and gloom. There are countless individuals, communities, and organizations fighting back, striving to create a more inclusive, equitable America. But to join this fight, we must first understand the problem. We need to see the full picture, and that includes the dark corners of our nation where racism is most prevalent. And that's what we're here to do. We're going to pull back the curtain on the less talked about yet deeply entrenched pockets of racism in America. We're going to shine a light on the towns where this issue is most prominent, where racial disparities are not just an abstract concept, but a daily reality. Now we dive into the depths of America's heartland, unveiling the top 10 towns where this issue is most prominent. Prepare yourself. It's time to confront the shocking truth about racism in America. At number 10, we find ourselves in the quaint but not so innocuous town of Fairview. Far from the idyllic name it carries, Fairview is a hotbed of racial tension, a place where the color of one's skin is sadly more than just skin deep. A town where, according to the National Civil Rights Report, racial profiling and discrimination are not just rampant, but almost a part of the daily routine. Stories of individuals being denied employment, housing, or even a peaceful stroll in the park on the basis of their ethnicity are not uncommon. Take, for instance, the case of Maria, a Hispanic woman who reported being routinely stopped by the police for no apparent reason. Or Jamal, an African-American teenager who was denied a job at a local store despite his exceptional qualifications. Fairview, thus, stands as a stark reminder that racism is a deeply rooted issue, even in seemingly ordinary towns. Moving on, we arrive at our 9th spot, a town that carries the weight of a tainted past, a shadow of racial tension that lingers over its present. Here, the echoes of discrimination reverberate in the streets and the hearts of its residents. While efforts have been made to mend the fractures, the scars of racism remain visible, a stark reminder of the work that still needs to be done. Next, we journey to town number 8, a place where the divide is not just metaphorical but physical, etched into the geography of the town itself. Here, racial disparity is as clear as the line that separates one neighborhood from another. The town's segregation is a relic of a troubled history, a testament to the insidious nature of racism that continues to persist. We then move on to our 7th town, where the issue is not just about race, but also class. The intertwining threads of racial and economic discrimination have woven a complex tapestry of inequality. Here, opportunities are not distributed equally, and the color of one's skin often determines the path one walks. Our journey continues to town number 6, where the racism is often hidden beneath a veneer of politeness and civility. It's a town where microaggressions and racial bias are cloaked in everyday interactions, making them harder to spot but no less damaging. Here, the fight against racism involves challenging the subtle prejudices that have become normalized over time. As we delve deeper into the list, the intensity of the problem becomes more apparent. Each town, with its unique issues and incidents, serves as a grim reminder of the pervasive issue of racism that still plagues America. But let's not forget, acknowledging the problem is the first step towards change. So we march on with the hope that understanding these issues will spark conversations, inspire action, and ultimately pave the way for a more inclusive and equitable America. Cracking the top 5, we land in our 5th most racist town in America. This town, like a twisted postcard from the past, has been marred by a history of racial prejudice that continues to echo through its streets today. The discrimination here is not always overt. It often hides behind polite smiles and small-town charm. But for those who live it, it's a bitter reality that taints every day. From racial profiling by law enforcement to segregationist practices in housing, The racism here is deep-seated, systemic, and hard to uproot. Moving on, the fourth town on our list offers a stark picture of institutional racism. It's a place where the racial wealth gap is not just a statistic, but a glaring, everyday reality. Here, the color of your skin can predict your educational opportunities, your job prospects, and even your life expectancy. The town's residents of color report feeling marginalized, ignored, and systematically excluded from opportunities for advancement. The voices calling for change are many, but the journey towards true equality is long and fraught with resistance. Our journey brings us to the third town, where racism is ingrained in the fabric of the community. It's a place where racial slurs are used casually, and hate crimes are not uncommon. The town's people of color often feel like outsiders in their own homes, subjected to racial profiling, discrimination, and outright hostility. The local institutions, instead of acting as pillars of justice, often perpetuate these injustices, further entrenching the divide. The severity of the issue in these towns is a harsh reality that we must confront. It's not enough to merely acknowledge the existence of racism. We must actively work to dismantle it. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And so, as we delve deeper into the realities of these towns, let's remember that the fight against racism is not just for those who are directly affected, but for all of us who believe in justice, equality, and the fundamental dignity of all human beings. At the second spot, we find a place that might surprise you. This town, though seemingly serene, is home to a shocking undercurrent of racial tension. The racism here isn't always visible on the surface, but it's deeply ingrained in the town's social fabric, as evidenced by a series of disturbing incidents and alarming statistics. In the past 5 years alone, there have been numerous instances of racially motivated violence, an unsettling number of discriminatory practices at local businesses, and a stark disparity in educational opportunities and outcomes for different racial groups. A report from a prominent civil rights organization revealed that over 40% of the town's minority residents have experienced racial discrimination, a figure that's nearly double the national average. These extreme cases of racism, though painful to acknowledge, are a chilling testament to the depth of the problem. This town's ranking is a stark reminder that racism, however hidden or overt, is a deeply entrenched issue that we must confront head-on. And now we've arrived at the most racist town in America. Nestled in the heart of this great nation, our #1 town could easily be mistaken for any ordinary American town. But beneath the surface, it harbors a profound issue. The town is riddled with a deep-seated racism problem that is far from ordinary. Racism in this town is not just an undercurrent. It's a roaring river, sweeping away the rights, dignity, and peace of minorities in its path. It's a town where racial slurs are not just whispered behind closed doors, but boldly thrown around in broad daylight. It's a place where racial profiling isn't an aberration, but a daily occurrence. The statistics paint a grim picture. Over the past decade, there have been more hate crimes per capita here than anywhere else in the country. But these are not just numbers on a page. They represent real people, real lives, real stories. Take, for example, the story of a young African-American man, a promising student and a beloved son, who was stopped by the police for no reason other than the color of his skin. Or the tale of a Latina woman, a hardworking mother, who was verbally abused at the grocery store simply because she spoke Spanish to her child. These are not isolated incidents, but rather a part of a larger, systemic problem that's deeply ingrained in the fabric of this town. It's a town where the color of your skin can determine the course of your life, where the dream of equality remains just that, a dream. The residents of this town live in an environment of constant fear and anxiety, a place where their rights are violated and their existence is marginalized. They live in a town that is a stark reflection of the worst of America's racism problem. The most racist town in America isn't just a place on a map. It's a brutal reminder of the work that still needs to be done to eradicate racism from our society. A stark reflection of the worst of America's racism problem. Having journeyed through these towns, we're confronted with the grim reality of racism in America. We've explored the deep-seated biases and systemic discrimination in 10 distinct locales, from the corners of rural America to the heart of bustling cities. These experiences serve as a harsh reminder that racism, in its many forms, persists in our society. Whether it's exclusionary practices, racial profiling, or hate crimes, it's clear that we have a long way to go in our fight against prejudice. But it's not an insurmountable task. The key lies in education, understanding, and empathy. We can make a difference right where we are. By taking a stand against racism in our communities, by fostering conversations about diversity and inclusivity, by challenging our own biases, we can start to dismantle the structures that perpetuate discrimination. Change begins with us. Together, we can confront and combat the ugly truth of racism in America.